Alan Porter did not inherit Canterfield as a passive beneficiary. He worked inside it. Alan was a high school valedictorian, scored perfect on his advanced boards, a Duke graduate, and later an Emory MBA. He had scored at the top academically before entering the family business. But Canterfield was not built from a resume. After Duke, he entered the family business earning roughly $45,000 a year and helped build the first Canterfield facility from the ground up. The company grew. Projects expanded. Facilities emerged across multiple markets. Alan sourced sites, supported development, and worked to build a scalable senior housing platform. The vision was becoming larger than one building. That was the point Alan says Wynn made the partnership proposal. 49, 51, we do this together. The understanding became simple. Alan would continue building. Compensation would remain compressed, and the real upside would come later, through equity. Alan was not waiting for a check. He was helping build the platform he believed he partly owned. After the original Canterfield project was completed, Alan expected reimbursement for expenses he had personally carried during development and operations. The project had been built. Value had been created. As the first Canterfield projects were completed, Alan submitted reimbursement reports for expenses he had personally carried during development and operations. Printing, marketing, equipment, operational spending. The reports were real. The expenses were tracked, and the projects had already been built. But Alan remembers hearing something that would become familiar. There was no money left. Ellen, Wynn's assistant, communicated that reimbursement would not happen. He remembers distinctly. It hurt Alan's marriage and personal life. Alan remembers Wynn explaining that he now had equity, that the future upside mattered more. Alan did not remember signing up to permanently carry unreimbursed expenses. But he believed the partnership would eventually make things right. Years later, when project number 2 was completed, Alan says the same pattern repeated at Oak Ridge. Construction finished, value stabilized, and again, he heard there was no money available to repay him. Only this time, the compounding numbers were larger. And Alan still trusted that Wynn, his father, would eventually do the right thing. While helping build Canterfield, Alan was also finishing business school. Wynn had told Alan the company would pay for it. Alan believed him. Alan kept working, kept building, and trusted that the promise would be honored. Later, when Alan asked to be reimbursed, he heard the same answer again. There was no money available. But around the very same time, literally the same week, Wynn purchased Northside Bank in Adairsville, Georgia. For Alan, this became another defining pattern. Promised support, delayed reimbursement, and major capital activity happening somewhere else. Alan would repeatedly hear there was no money, while large transactions and investments continued around him. Over the next 8 years, Alan helped find, build, and develop the Canterfield sites. More and more, he was carrying the work himself. By 2019, Canterfield had grown into 11 properties, finished or under construction, across 9 locations in the Southeast. Cumming, Oak Ridge, Kennesaw, Ocala, Clay County, Bluffton, Franklin, Tallahassee, Fort Myers. But as each project finished, the same phrase kept coming back. We ran out of money. Alan continued absorbing expenses, and he continued trusting that Wynn, his father, would eventually make it right. Most development companies have a team: acquisitions, finance, entitlements, zoning, procurement, construction, accounting, operations, asset management. That is normal. A real development platform is not one person. It has departments. It has systems. it has redundancy. And on the management side, there is usually a separate team too. CEO, CFO, COO, head nurse, regional operators, support staff. People whose job is to keep the buildings running after they open. A huge amount of the work flowed through Alan. Finding sites, working with brokers, pushing entitlements, solving zoning issues, helping with approvals, working lenders alongside Win, because lending was Win's world, coordinating construction problems, helping openings, fixing operational issues after the buildings were complete. And then there was the people side. Senior housing does not run itself. You need administrators, directors, nurses, department heads, operators who can actually open and run the buildings. Alan placed ads. Alan searched for directors. Alan helped identify operators. Win often looked for people he already knew. From the outside, Canterfield looked like a large development company. A growing senior housing platform spread across multiple states. But internally, the operation was remarkably small. For much of the development period, the core team was largely Alan, Win, and Win's assistant, Ellen. That was the machine. There was no large development staff, no deep institutional management platform. Just a very small team building and operating a portfolio that would eventually represent hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate. The company looked big. The engine behind it was surprisingly small. Then COVID arrived. Senior housing entered survival mode. Occupancy fell. Costs rose. Financing tightened. And the small machine behind Canterfield began to strain. People pulled back. Ellen left. Win left to Hilton Head. And Alan stayed inside the business. He saw what was coming. Staffing problems, lender pressure, cash flow stress, and a portfolio that suddenly needed real operational leadership. Alan helped secure more than $10 million in federal relief for the company, pursuing ERC and PPP relief, and largely by himself, not from the sidelines, but from inside the operational crisis. By 2020, the pressure had become unsustainable. Alan was told the company needed money, and if he did not inject it, there may not be enough left to keep going. Alan put in approximately $400,000. This was not a small bridge, especially when his own paycheck was roughly $3,600 a pay period. A year later, he put in another $175,000. Alan believed he was helping the company survive, but he did not agree to become the permanent lender of last resort. He was still an operator, still on a modest salary, still waiting for the equity promise to become real. And slowly, he began to understand the structure was unsustainable. The company did not just need more effort. It needed liquidity. It needed professional management. And it needed a real exit path. The portfolio was bid out repeatedly. Institutional buyers reviewed the assets. Twice. Brad Klausing and Senior Living Investment Brokerage ran organized sale efforts. Approximate enterprise values approached $250 and $280 million. At the time, the company carried roughly $220 million in senior debt, and Win claimed approximately $30 million in insider debt. But Win rejected both opportunities. But the most serious opportunity came from inside the capital structure itself. Locust Point Capital, our mezzanine lender. Over the years, Alan, Win, and Locust Point principals Dan Cantardi and Eric Smith had discussed a possible future equity solution, an institutional recapitalization, a real exit. By 2022, that possibility became real. Dan Cantardi had prepared management platform through Phoenix Senior Living and equity willing to support a transaction. Alan and Dan aligned around approximately $306 million. This was not theoretical. It was modeled, structured, and supported by sophisticated market participants. During that period, Alan was getting calls from brokers. It was buying season. The market wanted senior housing assets. But Dan Contardi's path was different. Locust Point Capital was already inside the capital structure. Dan Contardi and Eric Smith knew the portfolio, and Dan's number was the highest. No broker fee, no outside sales commission, a cleaner enterprise-level transaction. But Wynn refused. He said the company was worth more, approximately $400 million. Allen then learned that if he pushed forward with a sale, Wynn intended to charge interest on claimed insider advances. First 5%. Allen had Felicia Voloshin run the numbers. Then Allen told Wynn he wanted out. After that, Wynn changed the number to 10%. Felicia ran the math again, and Allen says the result was devastating. The interest structure would have wiped him out. So Allen stopped pursuing the sale before an LOI. And Wynn made his position clear to Dan. He would not sell. After Wynn refused the institutional sale path, Allen did not know what came next. He felt trapped. So he started talking to business school colleagues, trying to understand how to solve a problem inside a company he did not control. Then Wynn pursued a different direction. He brought in Brad Rutkowski, a truest banker around Allen's age. Brad had not run senior housing operations. No job posting had gone out. No broad search had been conducted. At that point, Allen was still the person placing ads, hiring staff, and trying to keep operations moving. Brad seemed to appear from nowhere, and according to Allen, Brad said he would need approximately $500,000 a year. Wynn agreed. Allen was still making roughly $110,000. Then came the part that hit hardest. Brad would not come in without equity, and Wynn demanded that Allen give up part of his own equity to make that happen. Not new equity, Allen's equity. The issue was no longer that Wynn refused to pay people fairly. He was willing to pay Brad $500,000 a year, almost 5 times what Allen was making. And he wanted Allen to give Brad part of Allen's own equity. For Allen, that was the fracture point. If Wynn would not sell, and now wanted Allen to surrender his upside to a replacement, then Allen needed out, repayment, reimbursement, and a formal resolution of his equity. After the Brad discussion, Allen still hoped Wynn might finally start making things right. By early 2024, Allen was being crushed financially. He was in a custody case that would eventually cost more than $800,000. From the outside, people assumed Allen was wealthy. But inside the business, Allen was still trying to recover expenses, loans, and equity value from a company he had helped build. Additionally, Allen was being forced to absorb pass-through taxes by the management company every year. At the start of 2024, Allen was running out of options. He had pleaded with Wynn about Brad Rutkowski, about the unfair economics, and about years of unpaid reimbursements. At the same time, Allen was being crushed in a custody case. The court treated him like he was wealthy. But inside Canterfield, his equity was trapped. His reimbursements were unpaid, and his cash flow was controlled by Wynn. Allen needed 2 things, his money and the truth on paper. Wynn met Allen at Taco Mac to talk. Allen brought an affidavit he had prepared for Wynn. It was meant to put the truth of Allen's financial situation in writing. Page 1 showed Allen had not been handed wealth. He started at roughly $45,000 a year. Page 2 addressed the missed sale. Wynn had tried to go back to Dan Contardi, but by then, the price had moved lower. Page 3 addressed the interest squeeze, after using interest to block Allen from pursuing the sale. Wynn said he would no longer pursue it. Page 4 acknowledged the rift. Page 5 was left unsigned. Wynn had reviewed it. He had written on it, but he would not sign. Allen remembers him saying he had to protect his family. Allen was his firstborn son. After Taco Mac, Allen still hoped the issue could be fixed. Wynn would tell Alan he would never do that to him. Then some payments would appear, enough to make Alan believe progress was possible. But then Wynn would disappear again, and Alan would have to hound him again. Some of the payments went back to expenses from the original Canterfield project. Years late, no interest, no clean accounting, just partial repayment after years of asking. Then the cycle stopped. Alan asked for an accounting. He wanted to know what had actually been repaid and what had not. Wynn's longtime assistant Ellen McCabe reviewed the books. Ellen could not find repayment for many of the expenses. Her review identified approximately $144,000 that did not appear repaid, and no repayment followed. During this same period, Alan was not walking away. He was still trying to save Canterfield. Ellen had confirmed unpaid expenses. There was no management company, no formal leadership structure, no operating roadmap, and no clear business plan for what came next. Instead of escalating, Alan sent Wynn something different, a turnaround plan. He called it Canterfield Management, Reimagining the Future, a 16-page turnaround proposal for Canterfield. It addressed staffing, leadership, technology, debt strategy, and measurable operating metrics. The plan proposed professional management, defined executive roles, regional oversight, marketing, financial controls, and data-driven accountability. It outlined growth opportunities, competitive positioning, and a roadmap for the company's future. This was not Alan walking away. He was still trying to build a path forward. Wynn never acknowledged or responded to Alan about his plan. By spring 2024, the reimbursements had stalled. The turnaround plan had gone nowhere, and the relationship was breaking. Still, Wynn agreed to meet Alan at Village Tavern. One of the last times. Alan recorded the conversation, hoping to discuss operations, repayment, and a path forward. Instead, the meeting became the fracture.
I'm recording now because my dad's been yelling at me, and I'm asking him to stop yelling at me. This is recording both of us to see if we raise our voices.
And I'm listening to what Alan's saying, and he's crazy. Bye. Every time I get with you, you start yelling, or you start accusing me of this and that and that, and I'm trying to keep us alive.
Name one thing.
And you fascinate me.
Name one thing I've accused you of, man. One. Just one thing in this conversation. Just one.
I have no idea. All I know is I've supported you all through your life. I gave you half of the company. Do you understand what half the company means?
And I tried to sell it.
It might be like $20 million.
Well, what's the plan? Are we selling it now or not?
The plan is, as you were
I'm not well aware, so stop saying that. I don't want to talk to me about anything.
I don't. Yeah, because of you just bring up.
You won't talk. You won't talk, Dad.
Oh, yeah.
You got
a whole tape of it.
Will you and Mary talk to me? You said that my sister hates me and my brother thinks I'm weird? Oh, Dad.
After Village Tavern, Wynn stopped engaging. Months passed. Alan hoped Wynn would sell or finally create a path forward. But the silence continued. Legal fees mounted, and Alan's equity remained trapped. Then Pete Hasbrook stepped in, Alan's current family attorney, who also used to do business litigation. Not to threaten, to resolve. In 2024, Pete asked Wynn to contact him repeatedly. Wynn simply ignored him. By late 2024, Alan believed the company was drifting. No management platform, no leadership path, no exit strategy. At the same time, the custody fight, unpaid reimbursements, pass-through taxes, and years of uncertainty were taking a physical toll. Alan had a heart attack at 41. He was placed on a ventilator. This does not prove liability, but it changed everything. It was no longer just financial stress. It was survival. Before lawyers, Alan asked for mediation. February, March, April. He wanted a neutral person in the room. He still wanted a relationship with his dad. Ellen agreed mediation was needed. But Wynn did not engage. While recovering in 2025, Alan saw Wynn at a family gathering. Wynn agreed to talk. On March 17th, they had another call.
That you're using my Social Security for lots of different lines of credit right now. They asked for verification. I don't need to give you any more information than that. I need access to the accounts. But I don't like being cut out. I don't like these sideways red herring arguments that you don't have access. That's not what I'm talking about. I want access. Stop telling me that you don't even have access. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Stop. I'm the owner of the company. I want access, and you're denying it from me. I mean, you had Ellen deny it. Ellen denied it. I told her that's illegal.
Now, you're desperate. That's what I'm worrying about.
Oh, I'm allowed to. I'm legally allowed to pay myself expenses. Stop.
What expenses have you had in the last year?
Dad, you never repaid me for everything to begin with. You said you zeroed me out. I told you, you did not. You did not. What you did was start calling me names at different conversations, and I was just tired of it. Right now, I'm telling you, I need the online access, period.
And what are you going to do with it? I mean, I don't have it, but what are you going to do with it? Tell me what you're going to do with
I
it.
don't think I need to.
Well, then don't. No, I don't want to. I don't want to give it to you unless you tell me what you're specifically going to do.
Is this like a power trip right now?
Ellen's on the line.
I'm desperate because of we didn't sell the company. I didn't have enough money to live to begin with. I was living off not this company, Dad. I never got paid fairly, and I was owed so much money. It's not working. I was expecting us to sell years ago, and if not years ago, then 18 months ago. If not 18 months ago, then 12 months ago. And it's still dragging on. It's not right. Like I said, you let me out to dry. So it's time's up.
Which means what to me?
I don't know. It means I talked to Brad about selling everything. Your idea of selling the best properties and holding on to the others is turning them around. It's not going to happen. I mean, you can that's lawsuit immediately. I'm letting you know. Just
trust me.
I'm not trusting you. I trust my attorneys.
Okay. Can I call Peter directly?
Yes, please.
Okay.
He's not. I've been asking you to. That he's reached out to you over and over again this past year, and you said he hasn't. You told me he has not. But is there?
He's called me twice, and it said he wanted to meet with you and me.
Did you check your text messages?
What it was about. That was nothing.
Have you checked your text messages where it says, "Mr. Porter, please engage with me"?
Okay, I'm going to just allow him. I will send an email copy you and just say, Alan is allowing me to give you talk directly to you. How's that? Because I've tried 2 or 3 times and he won't take the call. So, and then afterwards he said he did come back, but that's after you.
During the prior year, Canterfield had defaulted on a loan. Alan believed that default was the result of Wynn's choices, refinancing, delaying, and refusing the sale path Alan had long advocated. Then Wynn brought in outside counsel, Greg Null, managing partner of Carlton Fields in Atlanta. Greg was Wynn's longtime friend. They had known each other through business dinners and overseas trips. Alan knew Greg only casually. Alan hoped counsel might bring structure, accounting, and a path toward resolution. Instead, a letter arrived. On April 23, 2025, attorney Greg Null responded. What Alan says he had been experiencing operationally was now written down. The letter stated that decisions involving sales and refinancing were within Wynn's sole province, and that Alan having a literal seat at the table would be counterproductive. The same letter questioned reimbursements, described Alan's salary as unusually generous, and portrayed the company as financially constrained. To Alan, this was not merely disagreement. It was formal confirmation of a control structure he believed had already been operating for years. By April 2025, the operational reality became written policy. Alan owned 49%. Then the conflict became immediate. Alan had legitimate expense claims, documented unpaid, And while those reimbursements remained unresolved, a reimbursement check was reversed. Greg Knoll characterized it as unauthorized. For Alan, the effect was devastating. He was already fighting a custody battle for his kids, Wynn's grandkids. And without reimbursement, this was no longer abstract. Control of company cash had become control over Alan's survival. He had to borrow money at predatory interest rates, over 30%, just to keep paying legal bills. After the letter, Alan began warning about the waterfall. He had spoken with multiple brokers, and in his view, the properties had significantly deteriorated since the missed sale window. At the same time, Wynn's claimed insider debt had grown from roughly $30 million to roughly $45 million. Alan warned that under that structure, the debt would be paid first, and his equity could be pushed to zero. He called it the Waterfall of Zero. Even as pressure mounted, the valuation divide remained. Wynn valued Kennesaw near $98 million. But Alan says guidance from Brad the broker was materially lower, closer to 56. Alan warned that inflated values and insider debt could turn ownership into a zero. The higher valuation never materialized. Alan also began asking a different question. Who exactly did counsel represent? Wynn? The company? Or both? Because the positions now being advanced felt increasingly aligned with Wynn rather than resolution. By August 2025, a mediation and resolution meeting had finally been scheduled. Alan expected progress. Wynn did not attend. Greg Avioli, Wynn's new attorney, appeared instead. Rather than resolution, the parties entered a temporary standstill. Greg Avioli was another longtime friend of Wynn. The meeting did not resolve reimbursements, insider debt, sale authority, or Alan's exit. Instead, Alan agreed to pause the fight. He relied on promises of transparency, documentation, and a negotiated path forward. The standstill ran. Alan waited. He made real-world arrangements to repay debt, to stabilize, and to finally breathe. Then the clock ran out. Greg Avioli informed Alan Oak Ridge had closed, but lender demands had supposedly consumed the proceeds, leaving nothing, no payment, no liquidity, no proceeds for Alan. He heard something he had heard before. There was no money. The assets sold. The proceeds moved, and the 49% owner was told there was nothing left. For Alan, the problem was no longer future value. The higher valuation had never materialized. The clean sale window was gone, and moving forward, looked increasingly like zero. So Alan stopped looking forward. He and his attorney began pursuing something different, a derivative claim. In simple terms, a derivative case does not ask, what might happen later? It asks, what happened already? What was the company worth? What opportunities were missed? What authority was used? What proceeds moved? And what harm occurred before the value disappeared? For Alan, the case had to go backward. Demand letters followed. Alan's position was no longer, please fix this. It became, explain it, document it, and account for what happened. And stop. Stop selling assets without Alan's consent. Stop moving forward without transparency. The fight had changed. It was no longer about waiting for a better future. It was about understanding the past and preventing more damage. And in response to the demand letter, the next month, Canterfield of Ocala sold. For Alan, the message felt clear. The transactions were continuing, even after formal notice. And at the same time, Alan's attorney left his firm. Alan was suddenly left largely on his own. Alan was confused. If he owned 49%, how were these assets being sold? How could the transactions continue? Without his approval? He went back to the operating agreement and saw something important. Wynn had agreed that major transactions required member consent. That mattered. Wynn's new attorney, Mike Reeves, was not a stranger to the story. He had represented both Wynn and Allen in prior matters. Wynn already knew him. Reeves produced thousands of pages of closing materials, and Allen began reading. What he found raised new questions. Allen saw sworn affidavits. In multiple transactions, Wynn stated that required consent existed. The documents appeared formal, notarized, and relied upon to close. But Allen noticed something else. The operating agreement referred to member consent. The closings attached something different: manager resolutions. And Allen began asking a new question. If consent was required, who gave it? Then Allen noticed the pattern. 3 major sales. Carlton Fields as closing counsel. The same authority structure. The same type of signature. And many of the same participants. Again and again. Allen was no longer asking, why did this happen? He was asking, how did these transactions close? If member consent had been swapped for manager resolutions. After discovering Wynn signing around him, Allen found something else. Months earlier, Carlton Fields had helped close another Oak Ridge transaction, a $7.9 million loan, approximately $4 million in net proceeds, and the loan pledged 100% of the membership interests, including Allen's 49%, without Allen's signature, without his consent. To Allen, this was the contradiction. Financial distress on paper, millions moving behind it. And who closed the loan? Carlton Fields. After that discovery, Allen notified First American Title. He identified what he believed were facial defects in the closings. First American opened 3 separate claims and retained defense counsel. Allen also contacted Ventus, the publicly traded REIT that purchased the properties. 4 properties, 3 states, over $100 million. The dispute was no longer just inside the family. It had reached the institutions that closed, insured, and bought the assets. By 2026, Allen says he was out of money. Years of litigation, loans, and failed reimbursement had taken their toll. At the same time, Wynn was finishing one of the largest homes of his life and ever to be seen on a Hilton Head beach. And the dispute continued. Allen needed contingency counsel. He found Richard Wingate, a trial lawyer willing to review the case. And the fight changed again. On January 30th, Allen filed a verified lawsuit. The allegations were no longer informal. They were sworn. Allen says Wynn would not accept electronic service, and the lawsuit slowed before it could even begin. What Allen expected to move quickly dragged into spring. Mediation was discussed, but Allen says there was a condition: to come to the table. He would first need to limit or surrender important rights. For Allen, that felt backwards. He believed the issues should be discussed first. Still, the mediation moved forward. Months after the lawsuit began, the parties finally met. Meanwhile, updated broker guidance had emerged. Allen says the newer market feedback was materially lower than prior expectations. But Allen believed something familiar happened next. He says Wynn immediately pushed the numbers higher. Again, for Allen, this was not new. He believed valuation expectations and market reality were continuing to move apart. Yet mediation moved forward anyway. The mediation finally happened. Allen and Richard Wingate in one room. Wynn, Greg Aviola, and Mike Reeves in another. The negotiations moved back and forth all day. The discussions began near $10 million and moved toward $18 million. For the first time in years, resolution appeared possible. Then, as the mediation was ending, the economics changed. Wynn raised something new. Alan would owe taxes from the prior sales, supposedly only a few $1,000,000. But there was a problem. No final accounting existed. Alan did not know the number. Richard did not know the number. And Wynn did not know the number. Mediation could not finish. With a mystery liability dropped at the end of the deal. And the mediation ended. After mediation collapsed, Alan contacted Felicia, the accountant, and learned the tax issue was not new. Felicia had already discussed the sale tax consequences with Wynn back in 2025, while the sales were happening. The same sales closed through Carlton Fields. The same period Avioli was involved. To Alan, Wynn had known the tax problem was forming before it was dropped on him at mediation. Then Alan realized the tax problem was not over. More sales were still being discussed, and the proposed solution still depended on the future. Future sales, future accounting, future insider loan calculations. To Alan, that meant trusting the same structure he was already disputing, the same control, the same accounting, the same decision makers. He called it the future waterfall. Private resolution had failed. Mediation failed. The tax exposure remained, and additional sales were still possible. So Alan returned to court. Emergency motions sought tax protection, accounting, preservation of proceeds, and limits on further dissipation while the dispute continued. But even then, the case did not immediately move toward the facts. A procedural fight began. Venue, removal, and where the case would be heard. For Alan, the conflict still had not reached the merits. It had reached another delay. All while he's subject to an $8.5 million tax exposure caused by Wynn Porter, Alan eventually organized the dispute into something simpler. A verification framework, not conclusions. Questions. Were member consents obtained? Did proceeds move? How were transactions authorized? What accounting exists? And who knew what? When? This story is not merely about a family disagreement. It is about ownership, control, and what happens when those become separated. For Alan, the problem became increasingly simple. He says he remains owed hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses and reimbursements, still disputed. He says pass-through taxes were imposed without matching distributions. And even after years of conflict, the proposed solution remained largely the same. Wait. Wait for future sales. Wait for future accounting. Wait for trapped equity to someday become liquid. But Alan says he had needed out and needed resolution for years. For Alan, the structure created a deeper concern. Could ownership be delayed until waiting itself became leverage? He called it the Waterfall of Zero. Equity without proceeds, taxes without distributions, ownership without control. And now, the questions move to court.